Radio for Skaro.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Radio Free Skaro, episode number 750. I'm Stephen in Edmonton.
We're in Vancouver.
And Chris in Edmonton.
We don't really count numbers here because we had Wednesday cutaways and slash A Mission to the Unknown episodes, like other various things over the years. So I don't know how many actual individual pieces of downloadable content we've had, with your daily fluid links and stuff. Yeah, so
and the Wednesday cutaways and the all that stuff.
Yeah, but the 750 seems notable, I guess, just because it's an even number and that if it's easily divisible, like it's 3/4 of the way to 1,000, really.
Yeah.
And episode 500 was when Warren and I were in the UK for the first time.
Oh yeah, so it was.
Okay.
Yeah. And now, of course, we aren't allowed to go to the UK. So this is
really anywhere.
We could. They're as we record this. It's Saturday, the 4th of July. All the pubs are open and whatnot.
Well,
yes, which seems silly, but okay. England.
Well, I don't know. I know the EU
open,
has sort of said
coronavirus free. They're
everything's fine.
shape.
Everything's fine.
Yeah.
It's done. It's done.
It's over.
They cured it. It's over. You can just go to the pub. Go to the pub. Don't go to the pub. Do not go to the
Weatherspoon's got a
pub.
massive bailout because they totally needed that.
This sounds like when season 1 of a show gets canceled without any plan for season 2.
It kind of does that. They have to scramble, and
How are we going to finale this? I don't know. The pubs are open.
Yeah, pubs are open.
Nigel Farage was tweeting from some pub, so yeah.
Oh,
great. That's my preeminent Twitter account that I check every day. It's Nigel Farage and his various thoughts.
After returning from Tulsa without self-isolating for 14 days and all that, yeah.
Yeah. Happy times, everyone. Happy times. Here
Great
in the
time
world.
to be alive in the UK.
Yeah, and the US too. Hang in there, folks.
Yes.
Hang in there.
Stay strong and stay safe, please.
We begin this celebratory episode with a concession of a massive mistake that we made. So
Massive.
How very Canadian of us to get into the next thing afterwards.
Yeah, giant mistake. So we spun the randomizer last week at the end of our Leisure Hive commentary. And I think it was Chris Phone on Twitter pointed out that, guys, you already did a Frontios commentary. We drew Frontios in the randomizer. And amazingly enough, despite Frontios being one of the most iconic stories in Doctor Who history, none of the three of us remembered that we'd actually done it 6 years ago. So with regret and also at the same time, great celebration for not having to watch Frontios again. We're going to start this episode by spinning the randomizer again.
Yeah.
And selecting a new story to do for our next commentary, which will probably follow on sometime in the weeks to come, towards the end of this month. So Chris, do you have the randomizer open now?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's raring to go.
Okay,
the gears have been greased.
Well done. Okay, here it is. Okay, begin the spinning of it now. So I don't want to, I don't want to point fingers or call names or anything like this, but I will point out, I'm not going to say any name, but I will say that Warren and I are not necessarily responsible for the uptake upkeep of the randomizer.
Think of me as the Rancor keeper, and this is our Rancor.
And I'd like to point out, to in Chris's defense, there's a reason I'm not in charge of the randomizer, because I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah,
the instruction manual is quite hefty.
Is it really? I'm surprised there is one, to be honest. I thought that's just one of the things that you just download the PDF and nobody ever downloads it until they need it. And then it's like the link is broken and that's what happened and why Frontios is there. But
yeah, basically.
Well, that's enough talk about Frontios. Let's talk about the next commentary. Let's see what it is. Stop.
Battlefield. Gives me a
well,
good reason to finally crack the plastic on my season 26 Blu-rays.
look at that.
I never thought I'd say I wanted to watch something less than Frontios, but yet here we are.
Have we not
Battlefield's
done
awesome.
Battlefield? Have we not done Battlefield?
I think we have.
I feel like that's almost kind of a thing, though. You've also done.
Oh, you know what? I think Who Against Guns might, or not Who Against Guns, but
That's what it is.
the second one
Who for
did
Schools.
Battlefield.
Who for Schools.
Yes,
Yeah.
Who for
That's
Schools
why-
did it. That's
Oh,
so that's why we think we did it.
Because I think I was on that. Was I on the Battlefield one? I think I was on one of the Battlefield.
I definitely edited a Battlefield one. That's how I know.
I was on one of the Fenric episodes, so
Okay. Yeah. A quick Google search has revealed that no, we have not done a Battlefield commentary.
which we could have done with Frontios. Just saying, as
I
I
know.
impugn myself.
Yeah. So there we go. Awesome. Battlefield. So I think
I love Battlefield. I don't care who.
I
does
do
it.
too. I do too. You know what? We should just what we should do, because this is basically what all the Blu-ray extras are on that, is basically all the writers of season 26 come together and try to convince Ben Aronovich, who wrote it, that it's not as bad as he thinks it is. And maybe we should just invite Ben Aronovich on and says, Ben, seriously, we love your story. Stop it.
We don't
Stop
care that it was supposed to be
complaining.
3 episodes and you had to expand it to 4. It's still good.
Yeah. It is still good. It's really good. I like it so much. Oh,
I mean, I'm okay. I'm a massive sucker for anything from the Arthurian realm. So even John Badham, or was it John Badham? Whoever directed the 1981 Excalibur film with Patrick Stewart.
it was John.
That was
Badham.
John Borman. It was not
Borman.
John Badham.
John
It was
Borman.
John Borman.
John Borman.
Yeah, I thought Badham was wrong.
Badham did 2010 and various other things.
Did he really?
War Games.
No, wait, that's Peter Hyams. Who the hell am I talking about? John Badham was working.
He did War
John
Games,
Badham
yeah.
did Saturday Night Fever.
Oh,
Yes.
cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah,
It's important to get these mid-70s and 80s directors right.
I like how we're
Battlefield.
going off top. This is something we would usually reserve for the commentary, this type of off-topic banter. But yeah.
Yeah, I
Anyway.
look forward to this now.
Me too.
Way more than Frontios.
Oh, God, yeah. That's excellent. Oddly enough, you ready for this? We went from 6N to 7N, production code-wise. We just
We're a
moved up
whole,
one.
we're a
Boy,
whole
that
end
is odd.
further along.
Not interesting, but odd.
Well, that's true. The history of RFS right there. Not interesting at all. This week, though, today and next week, we do our 2-part miniscope on Doctor Who director Douglas Mackinnon. He have many stories he did, but we had to break it up into 2. 8 stories, 8 episodes, I suppose. This week we cover off his David Tennant, Matt Smith era ones, being Sontaran Stratagem, Poison Sky, The Power 03, and Cold War. So stay tuned to that later on.
Also,
in this episode.
thanks to him for replying to us on Twitter about the fact we're doing this too.
He was honored to be. I mean, no, all due respect to Douglas Mackinnon, it wasn't like, hey, it's our 750th episode. Let's do a mini scope. It's just like that's how it worked out. We could be in the middle of a Leisure Hive commentary right now. We could be just doing nothing. We could be doing Frontiers for the second time, and it would have been like, oh, let's celebrate our 750th episode by doing another Frontiers commentary. It could have just
Wow,
as easily been that.
That's nuts. So
I don't think celebrate is the right word in that.
Yeah.
Not really. No. Anyway, so Battlefield will be coming up later this month. Isn't that exciting? Oh, I'm so excited. And I think we will do the standard broadcast one because I know there's a movie version, but let's stick with the broadcast one. I think I know we did the movie version of Fenric way back when, but
Back then, we also were doing everything in one shot versus
I know.
now it's trying
that's a lot.
to keep episode lengths a little bit smaller because commutes are still not necessarily a thing, and
Yeah. even though some people don't. Well, some people listen. It's interesting to see what like some people actually watch the episodes along with us, basically. But other people just sort of just listen to us without watching the episodes. Maybe because they've seen them enough, or maybe we don't talk about them enough anyway to warrant watching along with it. It's like, I get the basic gist of what's going on. Oh, they mentioned the Brigadier. Okay, well, that's the first mention of something in 5 minutes that's actually happening on screen. So it's an easier listen, I guess. But it'll be fun. Looking forward to that. Just like the miniscope. After this, after the news section, most of which is I'm not going to say it is sad news, but tributes to a couple fine actors. But we'll get started with we're recording this on July 4th. July 1st happened this past week, Canada Day. Don't you know, the history of our own nation back in 1867. We decided to put a thread together on Twitter, celebrating the Canadian connections to Doctor Who, with behind the scenes and in front of the cameras and stuff. And naturally people said, well, you're forgetting about this person. And they're forgetting about that person there too. It wasn't a complete list. I said at the very top, this is not a complete list. Because I know that Will Sasso, I know basically everyone you see in the Doctor Who TV movie is Canadian apart from the main cast. So yes, you could, you could include them all in a tweet, but it was interesting. It was a thing I started literally on the night of June the 30th, thinking, oh, I know a couple Canadians that were a Doctor Who, and then it just kind of snowballed a little bit.
I knew like a couple of them, but I didn't know most of them. I found it quite entertaining.
Well, broadcast.org, John Prettle's website, broadcast with a W in there after the D, helped out for, like, I didn't know Robin Phillips, for instance, from Keys and Marinus moved to Canada and became an iconic director in Canadian theater in the 70s. And but then also it didn't mention that Henry Wolfe. I didn't know that Henry Wolfe, who of course played the Collector in the Sunmakers, I knew he moved to Saskatoon in 1983. But he recently celebrated his 90th birthday and has a theater named after him now in Saskatoon because he's just been such a fixture. Yeah, so I kind of want to go to that. But
83, that's almost 40 years at this point. So
I know.
That reminds me, not Doctor Who related, but it reminds me how John Neville showed up on The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. I'm like, the Jubilee guy? Because he was like a fixture in Edmonton for years and years and years.
Was he really? I don't know.
Oh yeah, he was the guy behind the Jubilee Theater, and which I don't even know if that's still around in Edmonton, but he was the guy. And then he shows up on X-Files and in the X-Files movie, I believe, and at the show as well. And in the Baron Munchausen as the main character, and I'm like, wait, that's the guy who was in Edmonton forever.
Your favorite movie of all time?
It is a fine film.
Yeah, I know you like it a lot. So anyway, links to if you missed that on the Twitters, I posted it on Facebook too, but links in the show notes if you want to look through at the various different Canadian the few, let's face it, there are still somewhat few. We've never been featured on screen unless you count the opening shot of Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, because it's at Niagara Falls, and just by default, you know that half of the falls is in Canada. So
there's also that
wide
pennant
shot
from Women Who Fell to Earth about some Canadian tourist joint.
That's true. There's a pendant. There's a Canadian flag in Coal Hill School that Clara teaches at, hanging from the roof there. So some of the shots in the corridor, thinking, "Oh, there it is. There's a Canada flag. We saw it."
And the Canada Goose mentioned in Trial of the Time Lord. Who could forget
Trial
that?
of the Time Lord.
This just shows how bad it is, because that's what we have to grasp at.
Grasping at straws. I know. Canadian creates the show, or at least organizes the focus group to create the show, and this is all we get. So. Anyway,
pop, and indeed pop.
Yeah.
But at least you had another addiction there, Stephen, this week.
God. Oh, I tried not to. So the BBC put this out officially on their website, doctorwho.tv/games. They have games there apparently, and I remember a few years ago back. There's this game, this sort of tile game, online game called 2048, where you have to like move all the numbers together and you have to make up 2048. And it's like it caught on, and someone made a Doctor Who version. And back when I had an office gig, I would waste hours and indeed days on end trying to play this game to finish it and complete it and get, basically, instead of numbers, they put doctors on. And so, you combine 2 Hartnells to get a Troughton and so forth. Well, the BBC now has an official one. They call it 13 because, of course, the goal is to get to 13, which makes it even harder because 2048 is actually like, what, you have to get to 12 or something like that? Well, this adds one more. One louder, 13. I am terrible at it. So what I do, my own personal rule is the lowest score is actually, because it's actually tough to immediately lose in that game, but it is equally tough to actually get anywhere past like McGann.
McGann is as far as I made it for the one time I played. Yeah,
I got to Colin Baker, and that's as far as I got.
I got to the War Doctor, which is another one. So it's even 14. When you say 13, it's like there's an 8.5 in there somewhere too. So if you want to play it with my rules is simply it's just like try to get the lowest score possible, and then you'll do great. And that's how I like to try and play it. I know Una McCormack has been posting a few pictures on Twitter. She's pretty good at it. She's got to Capaldi at once, and I've never seen anyone actually complete the game and get to Whitaker. But I'd love to see it on Twitter if that happens, or at the very least, I'd love to like Photoshop, which is essentially like getting your Rubik's cube and like just peeling off the stickers and just posting them there.
I used to take apart the Rubik's cube and put it back together again. So
see, there you go. That's just deconstructing. That is literally deconstructing the magic of it.
Well, it's also cheating.
That is true. That is cheating. Anyway, if you haven't played it yet, links in the show notes. I could have done with this game like 3 months ago, maybe. Like this, people are starting to sort of go back to. Actually, maybe if people are starting to go back to work, possibly against their best wishes, because maybe they were doing better at home instead of having to go in the office to do the same job, except with in a much less safe work environment. Perhaps you could fight against the system by playing this 13 game, and you're at work, but you're doing much less work because you're playing this game. And then perhaps people will say, hey, we are actually less productive now that people are in our disease-infested office building. Let's just send everyone back home again.
That is an elaborate scam to play a game.
It is a little bit. So this game is actually a sign of protest, is what I mean to say.
Okay. I'll take your word for that.
Yeah. Use it at your advisement. Let's talk a little bit of a Blu-ray news. There's a Series 6, complete Series 6 Steelbook coming out in the UK, of course, because the UK gets all these lovely Steelbook releases, and it's coming out August 10th. August 10th, 1 week, less a day after we get the Season 14 box set, which I just checked, and it's still on course to arrive in a month. So yeah, if you're in the UK and you like the Steelbooks, well, lucky you. You get another one coming your way. Do you have any of the Steelbooks, Chris? I can't remember if I've asked you this before.
No, I haven't.
No, okay, I wasn't sure.
I haven't imported anything from the UK, although I keep thinking I should do that for Macro Terror, Faceless Ones, Power of the Daleks Special Edition, like all that stuff.
Really? I've said this before. I'm waiting for the Season 4 Blu-ray when it comes out.
I think that's probably as long as all the stuff that's on those, such as it is on the Blu-ray, which it probably will be, because they've recycled all the stuff from the original DVDs onto the Blu-rays for like Season 19 or whatever. That might be the wiser thing to do, but I think we're probably still a few years away from that Blu-ray.
Yeah, I mean, on those, off the cuff here, I'm just, they are still working. I know that I think the global pandemic has probably, put a pause on like a lot of the extras, like be it the Behind the Sofa, the other documentaries and stuff. But based on a tweet, I think that Mark Ayers said a while ago, it might have been like last week even, or 2 weeks ago, I saw him say, I guess they're just putting everything on pause or something when it comes to the Blu-rays. And then Mark Ayers sort of replied, well, those of us who aren't working on stuff right now, actually. So it seems like the restoration of stuff is ongoing. The stuff that can be done remotely for these Blu-ray sets, but the actual extras perhaps are taking a bit of a backseat. So however much they got shot before everyone went into lockdown, it remains to be seen. But I know that they haven't obviously announced what the next Blu-ray set is, which kind of makes me happy, because at least we're only one Blu-ray set behind now. We're just waiting for Season 14, and then maybe we can all look forward to the same Blu-ray set at the same time when they come out next. Wouldn't that be great?
I'm going to guess Season 20.
Another Davison, eh? Yeah.
I have no input here because I just stream them. I'm that lazy.
Yeah, I know you are. I did order something online, actually, import from the UK, and it was Erica's birthday a couple weeks ago. So I thought, I know that the Doctor Who Trivial Pursuit was updated relatively recently with newer questions, and so I ordered what I thought was the updated one for her birthday. It was not. It was a different box. It was Malibu Stacy in a different hat that was actually the same hat. So, so now I decided, well, let's do this, because I felt really bad. Even though she said she didn't mind, I knew in my heart that she was very disappointed. So, I ordered from a UK site, because it's only a UK version. It's got the newest logo on it, and it's yellow. It's a yellow little triangle box that's shaped like a pie piece. But we ordered it. And it came relatively quickly. So now we have 3 versions of Doctor Who Trivial Pursuit in this house, 2 of which are the same, but the third one has Jodie Whittaker and Peter Capaldi questions. So that's pretty cool. So I look forward to hearing that on various different Trivial Pursuit podcasts that Erica does. Maybe we should whip out those questions sometime and test our own knowledge. Wouldn't that be fun?
I will do very poorly indeed.
Yeah, I know Tortoise Tavern did it back in the day as well. Yeah. I mean, I'm always game for such things.
Well, it's not going to happen now because
No.
I have to tear the plastic off the cards. But oh boy.
Well, we have a Frontios commentary we have to record first.
Oh boy, do we ever.
Yeah, we are going to record one just for our Patreon subscribers. It'll be
No.
we won't. We'll never be recording that ever again.
Listen, we love you, Patreon subscribers, but come on.
Yeah, 452 I think is our Frontios commentary for what it's worth. Let's see, where are we at here? Yes, let's talk about sad things because a couple titans in the British acting industry passed away this past week. Lewis Mahoney, who was in 3 episodes of Doctor Who, is in Frontier in Space, the first black newsreader in UK television history, I believe, even though he was a fictitious one in the 23rd century in Frontier in Space. And also he was in Planet of Evil and in, of course, Blake, I'll Have Into the Rain Stops, which is one of the great scenes of all time in Doctor Who.
It is excellent, yes.
Has passed away at the age of 81. He was an icon. He was not only an acting icon, but also just stood up for, helped found performers against racism in the 1980s and apartheid in South Africa. He was like a early trailblazer and such a brilliant actor as well. Really good actor, and really sad that he passed on. And then just this like a few hours ago, as we record this, Earl Cameron, who recently celebrated his 102nd birthday, passed away at the age of 102. I think I know that I don't know the actor's name, but the actor who played Jamaica in the story that preceded The 10th Planet is the first speaking role of a black actor in Doctor Who. Earl Cameron's performance in The 10th Planet is very noteworthy because it just sort of like, boom, here we are in 1986, and there's a black astronaut leading this mission basically into space. It was such a notable thing. And it was such a notable thing to have Earl Cameron do it because he went on to a long and successful career, got awarded the Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire in 2009. A legend, an absolute legend, according to all the people who met him as well. So that was very sad. But what a life, 102. Between him and Carl Reiner, they have 200 years between them. Yeah. We lost them both this week. So, hats off to 2 icons that we were lucky enough to have in Doctor Who at points in their career.
For a second, I thought you meant Carl Reiner. I'm like, I'm pretty sure he wasn't in Doctor Who.
No, I meant Lewis Mahoney. Mahoney and Earl Cameron. So, lastly, this is for a good cause. Doctor Whose Line Is It Anyway? Kat is a part of this this Doctor Who podcast. Chris, can you explain the gist of what Doctor Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Sure. Yeah, there's so it's an improv style podcast. There's an improv game called Film Dub, which is people just improvising lines, new lines over top of existing movies, really. If you ever watch Whose Line Is It Anyway, they do it from time to time. But it's been around as an improv game forever. So they do that for Doctor Who episodes, and they get various people to do different voices, and they put out a little charity special for supporting the NHS, and they got Sophie Aldred and Nabil Shaban and Vinay Patel, Toby Haydock, and a bunch of other people to help and contribute for all that. Very
cool. Links to the show notes if you want to have a listen, and of course if you want to donate to nhscharitiestegether.co.uk is the link as well. So good for them for putting all that on for a good cause. All right, that's it. That's it for this news segment. But no, the 750th episode spectacular celebrations continue, everyone, with the first part of our look at Douglas Mackinnon in the Miniscope.
be a theme park from the future. Or we might be inside a miniscope.
Oh, shut up.
A miniscope, yes, of course, why not?
Yes, Douglas Mackinnon, he who has been on this podcast twice in the past, including a commentary for the Husbands of River Song. He did a commentary of one of his episodes for our podcast. Ridiculously nice fellow. We're not talking about that episode today, though. That'll come later, next week, in part 2 of the Miniscope. This week, we look at his first 4 episodes, which comprise of 3 stories, the 2-part Sontaran, Stratagem, and The Poison Sky, which Chris watched, and then The Power of 3 and Cold War, which Morin watched. So
I sure did.
Yeah, Sontarans returned in 2000. It's funny to think about that was like the first time the Sontarans were seen. Martha came back. Unit played a big role for the first time in the show, and they had a re-return in The Power of 3, oddly enough.
With the introduction of Kate Stewart then as well.
Proper
Power of
unit,
3.
yes.
Yeah, in the Tower of London. That's that sort of unit.
The establishment of all that mythology.
Indeed. It was intriguing watching. I hadn't seen the Sontaran ones for quite some time. I don't recall if I saw the Power of 3, the other 2 either. I know we watched Power of 3 for the Chris Chibnall miniscope that we did a while back.
That was a while ago.
It was a while ago, maybe a couple of years ago, in advance of his coming on to be showrunner of Doctor Who, did a Chibnall miniscope. But we'll cover off, of course, each story on its own, but I was noticing just the differences in changes of how Doctor Who and perhaps even television as a whole was made between the Series 4 stuff and the Series 7 stuff. It was marked departure, I have to tell you.
I mean, to say the absolute very least. So I watched the Sontaran 2-parter and then kind of half watched Power of 3 afterward last night. And just the fact that, SD versus HD, just the look of the Power of 3 is just so gorgeous relative to the Sontaran 2-parter.
It's made like film. Like cinema, now that it's HD. And when it was SD, it was still different. The way it was shot, especially the way it was edited. And I want to focus on the editing as well a bit today, because I think that plays a large role in how Doctor Who looks like anyway, and any television looks like. But I think especially with the editing between Mike Hopkins, who did the Sontaran 2-parter, and Power 3. And then it was Will Oswald, Will Oswald, rather. Of course, who's famous for Heaven Sent, amongst other ones. Did the editing on Cold War. So, but as I said, Chris, you watched the Sontaran 2-parter written by Helen Rayner, Return to the Sontarans, a big 2-part story. Donna Noble Freema, Adjumant returns. Your initial thoughts, yes, on this story.
Helen Rayner wrote this and the Series 3 Dalek 2-parter, and that was all she was credited with, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she's not going to be in the miniscope herself. So
no, she's written about the most amount of episodes you can write without actually featuring in the miniscope. It seems. Yeah.
And then, of course, all her script editing work on top of all that.
That too.
So when it came out a little while ago, I bought the David Tennant Blu-ray box set. So I watched everything in that over whatever span of time. So it hadn't been overly long since I watched this, which is, I don't know, good and or bad, because story-wise, it's really kind of weak.
Wow.
I'm gonna jump right to something I wrote down on my notes for the second episode. Talk of carbon and ozone and allusions to global warming. How dare they hit us over the head with such blatant things and cram them down our throats?
Yeah, back in
Take that, Orphan 55 haters.
Yeah, back in 2008
Wow.
when Doctor Who could do
Too
no
political.
wrong. Yeah.
No, I mean, story-wise, it was like, I still hate the Radigan character. He served... I guess he served a purpose, but
he did serve a purpose. I actually thought it was a very effective performance. He was annoying at the time, I thought, but then I look back and go, "Oh yeah, this is like totally Mark Zuckerberg here or something." Like this is kid genius.
I was not. I can't even remember the actor's name. I was never back. 2008 when this first went out or whatever. I was never really convinced by his performance, and still haven't been. But things I wrote down for other performances, like Freema Agyeman just kills it doing the whole double role thing. Catherine Tate, amazing, because Donna rules. But Christopher Ryan, the performance he gives as General Stahl,
Right.
is just so intense and focused, and he just that's the Sontaran you want. Like if you think back to Styre or Lynx or whatever, like Lynx is kind of almost there, but not quite. And Christopher Ryan just delivers like the performance of a lifetime as far as Sontaran.
That's what you want for bringing him back, but I think they did the smart play of having him play for comedy for the rest of the time, because there's only so much Sontaran you can do. Like really.
Right.
Well, I suppose so. I mean, Christopher Ryan came back for Pandorica as well.
Like one shot,
briefly.
literally one shot. Yeah.
But
And he's very good and furious too in that.
yeah.
But the big difference, of course, is Dan Starkey. The Sontaran he plays here is such a departure from Strax, and it's really, really weird to kind of go back to the first appearance of the Sontarans in the new series and see Dan Starkey doing something that isn't Strax.
Yeah.
Just because he's done it so many times, and it's just he's so ingrained as Strax with wanting to release fission grenades and acid worms and whatever that it's just it's kind of fun. And I mean he does the whole like serious Sontaran thing with a little bit of humor, more than Christopher Ryan, but it's still a completely different character from Strax.
And he was hired for. He was the first one cast. They cast Christopher Ryan later, but they cast Dan Starkey as like you be the rest of the Sontarans essentially, or one. And
ever so briefly, of course, in Time of the Doctor, he plays. You get a different
two feuding Sontarans. Yeah,
But still done for laughs.
Yes. Oh yeah. 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 I don't even know where to begin for Mackinnon stuff. There's some good stuff in here for sure. I think if anything, the performances, whether it's performances that he elicited from the actors, or if it's what they brought themselves, which is probably the latter, given how little prep / rehearsal time the production gets. That was far and away the best part of it, I thought.
The reason I brought up editing, because I just, the way that TV was made back then, not just the way it was shot or anything on SD and stuff, but I felt like there was a lot more editing in it, like just in between shot, a lot of cutting back and forth for reaction shots in television, because that's how television was. We need to know what the reaction is and stuff. Whereas I noticed like in Cold War, there's a lot more like shots that just sort of stayed on one person and you didn't see the reaction as much. But here, like I know I'm trying to think of,
there's one example I have to counter that.
Okay, go ahead.
Even two, really. There's in Sontaran Stratagem, I forget how far into the episode it is, but there's a scene where Martha is approached by the hypnotized security guys,
right.
and so.
I know the one you mean, because I had that one there. That's one of my favorite shots.
I'm still going to describe it for the listeners, but
yeah.
you've got Freema Agyeman. You've got Freema Agyeman standing a little bit down in the distance, and then the soldier guys walking toward her with the camera following, and then they start talking to her, and she's responding, but they never take the camera off her.
Yeah.
So you're kind of looking between the soldier guys. You're seeing like their arms, shoulders, kind of thing, and then they have their little short conversation, and then they walk back the other way, and the camera just backs up along with them as they walk for a little bit. So that's the kind of thing where you would normally expect them to do a 2-shot or cut back and forth.
Well,
but he stayed on on Adjman.
It wasn't. It wasn't because it was meant as a reveal. That's what I loved about that shot, is that it focuses on Martha going down there, and there are two squatties going. But okay, so we see them from behind, but we don't focus who they are, because even if you see them from the back, you might find out who they are. You can tell there are two soldiers. And Martha goes back and then turns around and walks the other way, and then the camera pulls out, and you realize it's the two squatties who have been taken over by the Sontarans earlier in that episode. I thought that was a brilliant shot, a brilliant reveal, and I just love economical shots that do that. They don't you could have had we'll just see the shoulder pad or something, do cutaways of various parts but not their faces. But that would actually that would flag up that you should be paying attention right now who these people are. We're trying to disguise, but really, if we're going out of our way to disguise who these people are, that it's probably going to be someone who should matter. But we don't find out until the very end of the scene that, it's those two guys. Oh no, Martha's in trouble. Yeah, I do love that shot.
And then later on in Poison Sky, there's a scene where the camera's basically on the floor, or probably is literally on the floor. When Donna's in the TARDIS, walking over to grab the mallet to beam the Sontaran on the public vent, but it's all you see is her feet and her walking and the mallets and whatnot. It's just it's the kind of thing where the choice could have been made not to put the camera that far down, but the impact it delivers is quite profound, because you don't need to see her face or her expression or anything like that. You know what she's doing, and it delivers the necessary feelings quite well. Yeah,
the mallet is the most important thing in that shot, so let's focus on the mallet, basically, is what it's doing.
Well, and even though it was a hammer and a mallet.
The quick cutting that I was alluding to, though, was sort of a lot of early conversation scenes where it's, just different cuts in, even when the woman who eventually dies in the car is she's just sort of talking on the phone or something, or the Atmos system.
You're talking the reporter at the start?
The report at the start. Yeah. And it's just cut between different shots of her basically doing the same thing, because it's the beginning of an episode, it's the cold open, and sometimes editing just creates a pace that you don't have the luxury to sort of do later on in the episode. I find there was maybe a little much for that. As I said, I don't think TV is made that way, that they don't have to sort of create the sort of false intensity, so to speak, through editing to sort of try and keep things moving a little bit. That's why I think there's shots later on in the HD era that sort of are allowed to linger a little bit more, because that's sort of how cinema is made. And there's a few conversations between the Doctor and the unit general, and the Doctor and Donna, where it's boom, cut, boom, there's another cut, boom, another reaction there, boom. It happened very quickly, and I think that's what I mean when Doctor Who and TV is made differently now. That I think we have a few more static shots where we don't sort of rely on editing to sort of create the pace of a scene, is what I mean to say.
That said, what you were saying about the cold open and the way it was put together, I think was also very effective insofar as it starts amping things up from the get-go. And because you've got the it opens with the Radigan Academy and then the students and her getting kicked out and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of standard and slow and whatever, but once she gets going, once she goes, then things kind of get a little amped up pace-wise. And that just helps get you into it before the credits.
Yeah, that's true. Different parts of the episode require different methods in editing to create pace.
Oh yeah, music. Think of the scene with the Doctor and Donna, where Donna's like, "I'm going to go home," and the Doctor thinks she's leaving, but no, she's just going to say hi to the family, kind of thing. That's completely different from a lot of how the rest of the story was told.
I do, speaking of that, because I wanted to mention one of the shots that I really liked about was when Donna gets out of the Jeep and goes down and, has a nice hug with Wilf. But that first shot is actually happening from above. So we don't actually know where she is when she's getting out of the car. And, there's a slight...
She says she'll walk the rest of the way.
Well, I know, but just at the beginning of the shot is where it's like it's an overhead shot and like literally just directly overhead, and I just love that because we just sort of see her like as someone sort of coming out of space and time down to earth again. We see it from above, and then the camera just sort of like as she starts to walk, then the camera sort of swings down, and we see like it's just some very parochial suburban neighborhood. I just quite like the way that was revealed. We didn't see the neighborhood first. We saw Donna's re-entry into that neighborhood because she was the focal point of that scene instead of the neighborhood. And I quite enjoyed that bit there.
Speaking of reveals, I had noted down the reveal of General Stahl without the helmet. The camera kind of starts toward the back of the head and does not quite a full 180, but most of a 180 from the background to the front, which is like slow little circular pan, which was quite good.
Mm-hmm. They really play up the reveal of the Sontaran without the helmet, don't they? Like I was almost expecting the cliffhanger to the episode to be the helmet lifting off, a la the Sontaran experiment or something.
But by the same token, though, they get their digs in as well. Like the one person says they look like a potato. The Colonel says they look like trolls.
A troll.
Even the Doctor gets in some short jokes.
I know that was. Probably I don't know about those these days. I'm just thinking, oh wow, we're here to like represent humanity again, so we're just gonna like make fun of the first aliens we see.
I'm glad you didn't say belittle, otherwise I'd have fun with that all day, or whatever the phrasing is. A
little bit different in 2008, perhaps. Sensibilities have changed. There was also one other shot that I noted down that I quite enjoyed. I can't remember the context of it, but Martha was in a hallway and the general sort of came in from behind there, and the camera just sort of does this like hard, like Japanese fighting movie style crash zoom over to the general, not quite all the way, but almost there. Which I don't know. It was a weird little one-off shot that I quite enjoyed. It was neat. Yeah. I enjoyed these stories. I enjoyed these two episodes. I have to say, I think I might have been middling on them at the time, but I actually rather enjoyed them.
I'm still not a big fan of them.
No?
Series 4 as a whole is, to my mind, a bit of a letdown. Donna notwithstanding, she was the savior of the series. But it nothing to do with Mackinnon, obviously, but it's still. I always took Martha's reappearance as like a way to. It's just kind of like the Matt Smith appearance in Deep Breath, where because there's been this big change in the cast of the show, there's going to be concern about people not watching because they don't like change, or maybe they don't like Donna or whatever. So hey, let's bring Martha back in as a bit of a bridge to keep those people watching and whatnot. And it just always seemed so disingenuous to Donna.
I always thought the Matt Smith thing was just clever. I've never done anything like that before.
I thought the Matt Smith thing was disingenuous to Peter Capaldi as well. And even when Martha was on season 2 of Torchwood, it's like we've had this established cast. Nothing has really changed for them, but here's Martha.
I get where you're coming from, but I just like the idea of doing that, of having a previous doctor call while the next doctor is there. I thought that was a real neat timey-wimey idea.
It's better than introducing Cousin Steve out of the blue, like most a lot of shows do. I
didn't see it as sort of like, oh, let's try and pave the way for Donna, because we already do Donna. I did think it was sort of disingenuous to Martha, in that like she was basically the hook to bring the Doctor back to Earth. Like there was no other reason for the Doctor to come back to Earth at that time with UNIT unless Martha was directly attached. And then it's even more blatant in the next episode, because the Donna needs to be sort of the conscience of the Doctor during the Doctor's daughter, and we have to have someone to talk to the Hath. And so they sort of literally shoehorn Martha into traveling into TARDIS at the end of this episode to do that, and it's just that.
Yeah,
was like,
the phantom TARDIS traveling thing.
Such a strange thing. Yeah, we don't have to talk about the Doctor's daughter. We don't have to do that. It's great. It's awesome.
Ever director or writer.
No.
If there's an upshot, and and this is kind of done again in the series 4 finale by Davros, but the bit about Donna accusing, maybe not accusing, but Donna saying to the doctor, "Oh, is that what you do? You turn them into soldiers?" That little bit with just how Martha has changed, and if she hadn't traveled with the doctor, she wouldn't be involved with the unit.
Yeah.
No, she'd be suffocated on the moon. So there's that.
But just that would be the one positive aspect I could take away from the presence of Martha.
Mm-hmm. I did like a revealing shot though at the very tail end of the cold open, where it sort of begins in out of focus, and then as free management turns around, we see who it is on the phone. I thought it was a great reveal. Actually, so that was a good bring it back to the episode at hand and the camera work and direction therein.
I also wonder whose decision it was to find locations with all those stupid plastic vertical, not blinds, but doors.
Oh, like all factories sort of have that sort of thing.
Yeah, but they were also it must have been the same location because they were all over the place in the Radigan Academy as well.
Oh, probably the same location. If Doctor Who is, if anything, economical in its use of locations, especially for the same episode that they're shooting. Yeah.
And then I had lots of use of purple in there, which was interesting. But just even in Poison Sky, like I don't know how much was practical. Obviously, some would be, but how much was CG? But I wonder how much trouble Mackinnon had with shooting with all the smoke gas kind of stuff all over the place.
It's tough for continuity, isn't it? Smoke and gas, you have to get about the same amount in every shot that you're sort of shooting because it's going to look different from cut to cut if it's a different take and everything. Yeah, that is.
I'm thinking post-pandemic, the practicality of that's going to go down.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
CG.
Post-pandemic, as happens in the Power of Three, there's a scene where there's a patient in the hospital bed who rips the mask off the porter or whatever guy, and it's like, oh, that's never going to be seen again.
Yeah,
it's a social no that it wasn't several years ago.
Yeah, even just seeing a face mask, I was like, oh wow, that seems current in a way.
Yeah.
I guess people did wear face masks in hospitals back before times, but and still today, of course. But anyway, anything more about the Sontaran two-parter before we press on?
That's about all I had. I mean, direction and acting quite okay, quite decent. Story-wise, still not that big on it.
No. I enjoyed it. Just the technical trickery alone of having all those Sontarans march down a hallway for like a 4-second shot. There's like probably 20 different takes of two guys in a Sontaran outfit walking down that, and then just sort of like digitally joined up to make it look like there's 20 Sontarans. Sometimes the direction is just like long, laborious technical trickery to get a 3-second shot.
Not as intense as they would have, as they did do for the Shakespeare Code for the crowd at the Globe, because they did the exact same. They did the exact same thing. They had a bunch of extras there, and they just shot them in various locations and around the theater and composited it all together. And that'd be a lot more hassle.
That's true. They did that for The Deadly Assassin too, back in 1976. So they've been doing these tricks for a long time. A long time.
Thanks, Obi-Wan.
Let's move on then. Let's move on to the other two stories.
Almost 5 years later.
I know, it's staggering, isn't it? That much time passed between episodes. Things had changed. Doctors had changed. Shooting methods had changed.
Resolution had changed for Doctor Who and The Power of Three. For some reason, I watched Cold War first. I'm just, in retrospect, I'm thinking, why did I watch Cold War first and then The Power of Three? It was very odd. There's a lot of episodes on that season 7 box set, and sometimes I got mixed up thinking, sure, for some reason Clara was now in the TARDIS, and then some reason it was back to Amy and Rory. But we'll talk about Cold War, Ice Warriors, Mark Gatiss, references aplenty in a 1980s Soviet sub with a hell of a guest cast. Warren, you watched this one. What were your initial impressions? We're talking about Power of Three first, or Cold War first?
Oh, yeah, that's right. All right, I did it in my head now.
You'll have to wait for your Ultravox stuff. Duran Duran
let-
banter.
Patience.
Power of Three, Chris Chibnall unit, Kate Stewart, boxes everywhere. Stephen Burkhoff in a weird performance that disappears halfway through screen, about which we'll get to. Yes, the Power of Three.
One thing I
Warren.
noticed with both of these is that, especially with Power of Three, where it's like on the tin, as they say in England, is that both of them are in very restrictive sort of environments. I guess Power 3 isn't as much in a restrictive environment, but it's literally about nothing happening for half a year or whatever. So that's restraint right there that Douglas Mackinnon has to work around, and I think he mostly does. Like, stuff keeps pushing along, based more or less on performance, not just Matt Smith's performance, but also like the whole family thing going on with the Pawns, is made interesting, even though some of it is Rory's dad just sitting in the TARDIS watching a thing. Somehow,
4 days.
I'm still kind of interested. Like, Power of 3 isn't great or anything, but given what they have to work with sounds disingenuous, because they have some good performances, and there's a good bit with the Doctor and Amy, which is another one of those, the arc, but it doesn't take away from anything else when they're sitting there and having a talk about what it's like traveling with the Doctor, and the whole thing of the Doctor being freaking out because he just can't stand still, which is very, very, very Matt Smith. All that works really well, I thought, and the fact that they haven't got, like, they're in a hospital, and that's done. Like, he's basically finds ways to shoot stuff that's very ordinary. I mean, that's kind of the remit for Doctor Who generally. But I think he does a really good job with both these episodes of, okay, I've only got this much to work with. What do I do within that? And especially with the hospital, I think there's a lot of good stuff there. And with the domestic stuff, there is too.
Yeah, how do you make the passage of 9 months where nothing happens seem
about a bunch of cubes
interesting?
Right?
Yeah, right. I mean, that's the thing. This is where the editing comes in. I mean, it's a very quickly edited show, which I found quite intriguing. It was the same guy, Mike Hopkins, who did the Sontaran two-parter. Did this? He only did 6 episodes total in Doctor Who, and 3 of them were.
And some of that is papering over the fact that there's nothing going on really, but it's well papered over, which is a tribute to not just to the editing, but also the directing, and also the way it looks too. Like, it's got a neat look to it, and that, you know, the grading is really makes it in the hospital, and it does also in just the general outside scenes as well, I thought.
Yeah. Did you like this episode, Warren? This Power?
I liked it more than I thought I would. I've watched it a little while back, and I enjoyed it more this time. And the thing with Stephen Burkhoff, until I read about what we're going to get into, I had no idea. He just seemed a bit stapled on as a villain, but that's not the first time that's happened in Doctor Who, so I just kind of let it go.
Yeah.
One takeaway I had was, especially the latter bit with Burkhoff, etc., is especially like you can see the seeds of Chibnall's series 11 and 12 stuff.
That's true, yeah.
In this quite prominently.
Yeah.
And I could, like, I kind of closed my eyes and envisioned Jodie Whittaker in place of Matt Smith, and I thought it was totally doable.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, that the scene, of course, and it's wonderfully shot too, because, you know, as opposed to some shots where it's like directly people talking directly to each other in a way, it's kind of blocked out in a way, like a sitting beside each other, and thus you can sort of get away with having a 2-shot, and we get to see the reaction of the other person in the same shot, as opposed to having to keep cutting back and forth. The I'm not running away from them, I'm running to them is such a wonderful scene, written and directed. It's one of my favorite scenes in all of Who. And the music that's creeping in the background, if you will notice, is actually the same music that Amy and Rory are having their final conversation before they jump off the building towards the end of Angels That Take Manhattan, which is actually shot before this episode. I
wonder if seeing Chibnall's stuff has preconditioned us, because before I was like, this is a little slight, but now that I'm used to 2 seasons worth of Chibnall-esque stuff, I'm like, it's okay, fine, no problem.
I think I definitely took more away from it this time than when we did, like, the Chibnall miniscope or when we watched it back in 2012. I got way more out of it this time, I think, exactly because we've seen 2 series worth of Chibnall.
Yeah, it's kind of like
we were spoiled in between that with a lot of Stephen Moffat stuff, which is very dense and very different, right? And so that it sticks out like a sore thumb, kind of just like Moffat stuff stuck out like a sore thumb with the RTD era.
It did a bit, yeah. It's funny, going back to watch the Library two-parter, knowing that is what went out when it was announced that Moffat was taking over as showrunner. And all of a sudden, we were watching those 2 episodes with a very keen eye. It wasn't just like, here's another very interesting Stephen Moffat episode. It's like, where is this going? Let's see what...
And it's not that any 3 of them are bad. It's just they're all different than each other.
They are. And that's good, because that's what Doctor Who should be. Different people have different ideas for the show.
None of which has anything to do with Mackinnon, frankly. But
nope.
As usual, the main scope is off the ranch.
Yeah.
Just like, in the classic series, Wiles is not the same as Hinchcliffe, which is not the same as JNT.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We've been mentioning it a lot. Stephen Burkhoff. So a thing that people have had complained about is that at the very end of the story, the Doctor just sort of like uses his sonic screwdriver and fixes everything, and then the episode ends. Yep, that is exactly what happened. Why did it happen that way? Because Stephen Burkhoff is a rhymes with his own name type of person. He so the story goes from several people. He was horrible. Basically, he was like he deliberately ruined takes, had several temper tantrums, did not do anything that Mackinnon wanted, and so basically all the stuff they used was essentially. They basically used everything they had from him that they could use, and even stuff like between takes, whether he's just, I have to think that even the voice probably isn't his, that it was probably dubbed on afterwards to give it some sort of gravitas and stuff. And so when he disappears at the end there, that happened in editing. They shot a whole thing where Rory was supposed to fight those 2 hospital porters and stuff and free his dad and everything, but instead they just sort of magically reappears back in the room because the stuff that happens at the end is basically a reshoot to accommodate for the fact that they had to completely chop Burkhoff out of the episode. So
can I just say that using stuff from when the camera runs, which is one of the things they mentioned in this,
yes, that is awesome. I love that.
Happens more than you'd think.
Yeah.
As a guy who's edited factual stuff for television, I'm like, there's been a couple times I've used stuff and reversed it or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Did some trickery just because it looks better if you use it, even though it wasn't intended to be shot.
Famously, the shot of the Tusken Raider in Star Wars raising his gaffy stick above is just a shot, 1 second of shot rolled back several times. Yeah, Chris,
but
you were saying
the fact they say that stuff like Burkhoff just walking between takes with the camera still rolling was unusable. That's that. How bad was it for them? I mean, like I was saying before we started recording, so we're referencing the wiki from TV Tropes.
Yeah, I've heard it elsewhere too. This is just.
But there's a quote from Starburst, an interview that McKinnon gave to Starburst magazine, where he was, I mean, diplomatic is such an understatement. About describing working with Burkhoff, saying that the experience of working with him on Doctor Who was something that'll never be repeated. You could ask anyone on the cast or crew, and they'll agree that his participation was extraordinary.
Yeah.
Wow, nicely put.
The restraint, the restraint shown is just phenomenal.
Yeah. So this is it's a thing that's said often. I know Jared Harris said it in that podcast for Chernobyl that I keep referencing, but the script is written for the final time in the edit suite, and that's exactly what happened with the ending of this. So don't blame Chibnall, don't blame Mackinnon for the way it was shot and edited and how quickly it was wrapped up. That is basically they did what they could do with what they had, which is television in a nutshell.
Without going
most things, actually.
Yeah.
Without going back and listening to our initial review of it in 2012, I would not be shocked if we blamed Chibnall for the ending.
Oh, I'm sure we did, because
Yeah.
we're jerks, you see.
Yeah, we didn't know this at the time, though. We didn't know this, so... Yeah, it's a shame that we didn't have a Doctor Who brand manager to tweet about how awful Stephen Burkhoff was immediately as the credits rolled, and then we would know this, but that never happened. Yeah, but otherwise, it's a fun story. It's great seeing that team back together again. I have to say, they're a good TARDIS team. It's Mad Capri. I know there's a bunch of stuff that was sort of like I think there was the visiting, or like the running off in the midst of the party to go visit Henry VIII or something, and elsewhere happened. Apparently, that was supposed to happen at the beginning of the episode, but that was sort of moved around a bit too. So like everything.
Yeah, but again, that speaks to the editing, and it works. So also, I think the quote unquote soft reboot of Unit in this is pretty great too. And there's some really nice stuff between. And Kate Stewart is, she's essentially nobody to the Doctor until that happens, but they managed to. As an old person, Doctor Who fan, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm getting some Unit feels here, and this is somebody who I just met 5 minutes ago, so they're doing something right.
Yeah,
there.
because she's the offspring of the Brigadier, and so instantly we have that connection. They mentioned,
but without Matt Smith and I can't remember her first name, Redgrave.
Gemma Redgrave. Yeah,
thank you, Gemma Redgrave. Without them pulling that off, they could have just said it, and it wouldn't, could have fallen flat, and it didn't. So.
Yeah. There's that shared history between them, yeah.
Even Matt Smith's line about getting a kiss off for Lethbridge Stewart.
I know,
This was kind of cute.
It's fascinating because they just sort of like that. For some reason, like, I suppose even though we never saw the Brigadier have a daughter, the fact that there's a Lethbridge Stewart on screen and we knew who the Brigadier was, for that moment felt much more validating to me than when they sort of mentioned, oh yeah, I didn't, no offense about mentioning the Brigadier. Oh no, Sir Alistair's the best, but he's stuck in Peru now. For some reason, that feels a little bit more like a throwaway fan service line as opposed to the Power of Three moment, where it just feels like the Brigadier is like he's actually influenced it.
Which is the episode where Matt Smith makes a big to-do about being able to travel back and see him, and then calls and
closing time
passed away.
Time.
That's one of the best parts of that episode.
Yeah, because he had just passed away relatively recently at that point. Did Nicholas Courtney, but no, I rather enjoyed the Power of Three. I think that episode has sort of increased in its esteem in my books over the years. It's been a lot of fun. So,
and I think even stuff I might have panned in the past just seems to work better now, like
because we're used to it, like I said, with the whole Chibnall
but a
way of things.
couple of Matt Smith scenes that I think I probably cringed at back in the day, so him playing Wii tennis and the defibrillator hello lefty.
I love that line. That's a great line as far as I'm concerned. I'm left-handed and biased, of course.
I think those played better this time around for me.
Yeah. There's also there's bits there that I enjoyed. There's a spinning camera shot basically when the Doctor's sort of like getting a plan of action together with Amy and Kate Stewart. The camera just sort of like swings around them 360 style. Different takes as well. Like he's just sort of cutting back and forth between different takes of Matt Smith explaining stuff,
which is tough editing wise.
It is very tough, but that's what I love about how TV is made now, is that we sort of take that as shorthand now. Like we don't. Like, continuity between takes, like those kind of shots is like, whatever. We know it's a stylish thing now. We don't have to worry that it's like, it's looking the same. Yeah, exactly. That's just how TV has changed. So, yeah. Anything else about Power 3 before I move on?
I was just going to say about what Chris was saying about Hello Lefty and all the Matt Smith stuff. I think it took two other very different Doctors for you to appreciate Matt Smith more. Because as it was then, it was just, okay, here's him being wacky yet again, which is, he's my favorite new Doctor for a reason, but yeah, I could see how that would get to you week after week after week. But now that we come back to him and he's insanely manic, which he is, way more than Capaldi, obviously, and much more than Whittaker too. You kind of enjoy that more than you used to. You know what I mean? Yeah,
because you have alternatives. You're not like if you're not quite enjoying this little, maybe that's a little bit too wacky and manic, but this is the Doctor right now, so you're stuck with him for 3 to 4 years. You can dip back. You can dip back and enjoy.
And same with Capaldi, really.
Oh yeah, I've always watched Capaldi. I'll watch them all. I love all Doctors, but.
Let's finish. I hadn't heard that about you.
Yeah, I know. Let's finish off this half of the miniscope then with Cold War. As I said, set in a Russian sub with a great
by
cast.
definition. Yeah, there's very like it's a base under siege. It's stuck in this one location more or less for almost all of it. And he works with what he's got, which is not a lot, and he does a pretty good job of that. I think like he finds every nook and cranny of that submarine to shoot from. Something you would not have seen in the old days of base under because you couldn't basically. And that's where it works. That they do this new thing with the Ice Warrior, which, much as I like to cap on Mark Gatiss for his increasingly tedious love of the old series,
Right.
And shoehorning in of practically anything, including Alpha Centauri, which I love, but come on now. Even so, he did do something new with the Ice Warriors. After bringing them back, they did do this entirely new thing with them, which totally works in that milieu because it's scooting around in places it wouldn't be able to go, obviously.
Yeah.
The cramped stuff makes me really think of Time Heist, as we'll probably talk about next time. Just using the same hallway, just from like different angles and the front and the back and all that kind of stuff.
I think this is done better than in Time Heist. Frankly.
Yeah, possibly.
I mean, you're kind of cut it slack because it's a submarine, so you just expect some of this stuff. But I think, given that, they did a pretty good job, especially with all the, like you said, smoke machines and all the rest of it, and all the cramped borders and water, and all that is very challenging to do.
Yeah, and I briefly mentioned like the use of like lighting, like the purple lighting in the Sontaran.
Yeah, the lighting's
story.
great.
Like his lighting skills. So, I mean, I know they have a dedicated lighting person and all that, but like the lighting of this was just fantastic. It's like all the dark and the shadow and the.
Yes. I was going to also mention the editing because this is the one that Will Oswald did. And it's a very different editing style. For good reason. It's not just a style because, it's sort of like it's a Troughton story in a way. It's a base under siege kind of story. But you build up tension more when there's something unseen without the use of like a lot of cuts, when you have static shots, because you're just sort of waiting now for something to happen when you're looking at a static shot. If there's a bunch of like different cuts and stuff, you're like, okay, well, something's going to happen maybe during the course of this. But I think he relies on a lot of very still shots, like, Matt Smith's just looking off, talking, and the camera doesn't cut away to any reaction because right now we're just sort of like focusing on what he's having to say. Reactions right now, we all know what we're feeling. There's something out there right now and we don't know where it is. Another thing that was way different, and this kind of reminded me of various shots in Heaven Sent, which was edited by Will Oswald, is the use of some slow motion shots and like the Ice Warrior helmet sort of flicking back and you realize that there's no one in there and stuff, like these sort of stylish kind of reveal shots, which were very effective, I thought. And, for use at critical points of the episode, it wasn't overused, but it was certainly used at various points to really hammer home the game-changing moments that had just occurred.
The other thing is, in terms of... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I was going to call out, just with camera positioning and blocking and things like that, the scene between Skaldak and Clara where she's just talking to his armor and you don't know that.
Yeah.
Is like definitely one of my favorite scenes like ever in the show.
I know, yeah, because and it's done like such a way, kind of like how it was done very skillfully to reveal, but not reveal that the two people with Martha were the two people who we'd seen earlier and who we knew who were indoctrinated. And so we didn't see, the Ice Warrior. We saw that the Ice Warrior was there. We saw the outfit, everything there, but they didn't focus on the fact like that the helmet was empty. That was very skillfully avoided. But we didn't, it wasn't done blatantly.
And most importantly, it never felt like a cheat.
No,
either.
No, it never did. Yeah, we all got the impression though she's talking to an Ice Warrior. There, we can see it. There's the Ice Warrior costume. Why would we think that the costume itself was empty? Yeah,
this is very powerful.
I was just going to say, in terms of performance, like this is something that, given, and I'm not capping on Gatiss because he is a good writer, and like you just said, that whole scene there is great. But given his broad strokesery and given the set in the 80s and it's in a submarine and they're supposedly Russians, this is ripe for farce or at least lazy acting, and you don't get any of that. Like, it is pretty grounded, all things considered.
Right.
Which it didn't have to be.
I'd say David Warner's performance kind of borders on
farce.
Yeah.
But even then, it's not as ridiculous as it could have been.
Well, that's the great thing about David Warner's performance is that it's so against type, because I think Mark Gatiss actually offered the role to him, and he was worried that, I'm going to be the villain.
According to what I read, Warner asked Gatiss for a role.
Well, I know, yeah. Then he said, "Oh, well, it just happens I'm writing one right now, and I know the perfect role for you." I listened to this on the commentary when I watched it. And yeah, it's great that David Warner plays this slovenly Russian scientist who enjoys Ultravox.
He's just not
Duran. He's
not the Klingon ambassador. That's
he's not the Klingon ambassador. He's not the Cardassian telling Picard there are 5 lights. He's not the stereotypical, Doctor Who villain or anything like that. It
not
is
any number of Big Finish appearances.
Yeah, and then you get like
he's not even the Doctor in Big Finish.
No, you get like Tobias Menzies and almost throwaway. Well, he's like superb. He's Matt Smith's successor as Prince Philip in the Crown, for crying out loud.
And also,
Liam Cunningham as the ship captain. What it does, if you've watched like The Hunt for Red October, where Sean Connery plays the Russian seaboat captain, where they basically they start off in Russian and then they sort of do a transition. And I guess
which is a brilliant transition.
It is, because it's not just people say let's talk in funny bullets and Natasha accents, and it's just they're speaking their natural dialogue. It's why Chernobyl works so well, because
John McTiernan is the director of that, and 13th Warrior, that Antonio Banderas, and they do the same thing there, except it's even more subtle, where he's sitting around and he doesn't understand the native language, and so as they go, they just sneak bits of English, which is supposed to be the other language, in, and gradually you understand along with them, and it's really well done. And John McTiernan has had a checkered career, but he is good at that thing. I have to say.
Yeah. I mean, sub movies are like a genre unto themselves. And because, as Douglas Mackinnon himself said to me at Gallifrey 1 in February of 2013, when I interviewed him there, no one actually knows what the interior of Russian subs looks like, because they are secret and they are still in use today. So there is still top secret. So basically every submarine you see in a movie is a guess at what they look like. So everyone is, I wonder if they designed subs based on what they saw in Das Boot, perhaps. Oh, that looks kind of neat. Let's steal that and use that in our new submarine.
The only thing I can throw into this is on the USS Intrepid in New York, they have a submarine in there, an American one. And as cramped as this looks, a real submarine is about 5 times as cramped.
Yeah.
Because you do a little tour of the thing and you're like, wow, the captain's quarters are the size of a closet. They're tiny, right? Where the officers meet is there's such a premium on space. So it's poetic license completely in any sub you're going to see on screen, which of course it has to be. But
Stephen, you and I would have a very tough time navigating the entire submarine.
Thanks for that backhanded compliment.
Yeah, Warren would be absolutely fine. He'd be able to jump up and down, Chris. And just look
yes,
at all
I am
the
in fact
room
2'4".
To Warren's point, I mean, every last inch of a submarine has to be put to some use.
And in fact, you want the torpedo job because you have more room.
Well, so submarine crews are, I think, unique insofar as anybody on a sub can do anybody else's role, or job. So everybody knows everything, literally, and they're from just a academic perspective, they're really interesting. And then you think,
well, you also have to have the mental fortitude to stay in a boat of that cramped nature for many months. It is.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure longer and longer now than it would have been, a century ago. But even thinking back to was it? I forget which side of it was. The Germans, I think, maybe. Most of the U-boats used in World War I were reused in World War II.
Probably.
Oh God.
So there hasn't been, in a lot of ways, hasn't been a lot of progression in the technology. And I mean, there's only so far you can take it, I suppose. But going faster, going deeper, or whatever. But,
on the other hand, some of these things are run on nuclear power, so they can just keep staying down there forever.
That too.
Yeah. Now I want to go watch Dust Boat.
I've never seen that, and I want to.
I've never seen it either.
Beautiful.
I've always meant to.
It's just absolutely beautiful. Wolfgang Petersen, Jürgen Prochnow. Oh, it's just gorgeous.
I've heard tell. It's one of the great films.
I've heard the 4-hour cut's the better one.
I was going to say, the only downside is that it's 4 hours long if you want to watch
I'll watch the episodic version in my mind. I'm sure that Douglas Mackinnon perhaps borrowed one or two.
I'm sure he did.
Maybe not shots as much as, but certainly feel, because that's what sub movies are all about, right?
And it's nothing like Dust Boobs, the SCTV parody.
There is no need for that.
Wow, that's so okay. So everyone who remembered SCTV,
you were doing so well, Chris. You were doing so well.
And from the 1980s, and okay, so they're just that targeted group who watched SCTV and remember that skit.
Featuring Martin Short predominantly. Yeah.
We're bearing the lead here when it comes to Cold War because it also featured the first major model shoot in the modern series history. A lot of those sub shots are actual proper models. Big giant model made by I think Millennium Effects. I think made that one. Maybe it was Mike Tucker and company. I can't remember who. And it was great. They basically, according to the interview that I had with Douglas Mackinnon 7 years ago, they shot it upside down because that's how you shoot things, I guess. You shoot like the models upside down, and then it looks like they're not like hanging there or something.
You got more room for the camera too that way.
That too.
I remember seeing making ofs for Next Generation and seeing like all the Enterprise shots in space were shot upside down.
Yeah. It looked great. God.
And then committed to Laserdisc, so they looked like crap.
You could just tell when something is a model and when something is CG, obviously, but there's a tactile realness to a model. It feels so,
Yes, but I would argue Rogue One says otherwise, and that's a recent development.
Well,
but even then, they built those out of digital model parts, so they were supposed to be quote unquote models.
I suppose.
But if you look at Phantom Menace, there's a crap ton of practical stuff in there that you would not believe is practical.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a crap ton of stuff in the new Star Wars films, period. That's
there
practical.
is. It just looks better. It just feels better. And, because you could do less with a model technically. So there's a slight restriction there because, a real sub will be tough to shoot around too and make it look interesting. So it just looks, it looks great.
Well, and even look at The Mandalorian, where there's a lot of game engine stuff that is not real around them, but it's being shot in a practical way. Yeah. Right. So it's kind of interesting marriage of the two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I enjoyed this story. I think it might be my favorite Mark Gatiss story. In that it panders to me, but not in as annoying a way as perhaps other episodes of his try to, and I think it looks great. It sounds great. It's still, I have to say, it's still weird to see Matt Smith and Jenna Coleman as a crew. It still feels very much Pertwee and Sarah Jane Smith to me. It's like, right. You both of you are proper Doctor Who people, but you're not. You shouldn't be here together at the same time. You are with different people.
Although Day of the Doctor sort of papers that over a bit, I think, for me, because it's such a key thing.
That's true. Yeah. Although I'd think of Day of the Doctor mostly because of it. Tennant and Smith are together with John Hurt for a lot of it too.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of it is key upon what Clara does and says. So.
True.
And don't forget the Zygon mention in Power of Three as well.
That's true.
That's true too. Yeah.
Anything else left to talk about Cold War before we wrap this half the miniscope up?
Nothing springs to mind. That spaceship at the end isn't so great, but that's not Douglas Mackinnon's fault.
That's true. That's all CG. As well as maybe the CG Skaldak at the end, too. I thought maybe things have progressed on.
But I do like how they have a lot of Skaldak being a big claw coming out of the ceiling.
That's true, too. Yeah, like a practical effect claw. And like hanging on it, too. Like static shot of it grabbing like Jenna Coleman's face there for like, it doesn't cut away from that. Like it's okay.
It's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, it is, man. Yeah, well shot stuff. That was enough in its own to qualify Douglas Mackinnon for a miniscope. And so we would ask.
I'm sure he's thrilled to hear that.
We would ask the question right now: would we like to see Douglas Mackinnon come back? And we would say yes. Well, good thing because we get to talk about more of his stuff next week with Listen, Time Heist, Flatline, and then The Husbands of River Song is what he worked on last with Doctor Who before going off to do like Sherlock and Good Omens and stuff. So yeah, we'll talk about those 4 episodes next week on this here podcast, Doctor Who, Radio Free Skaro. So do join us for that, won't you? Until next time, I am Stephen in Edmonton.
Warren in Vancouver.
And Chris in Edmonton.
So long for now.
You've been listening to Radio Free Skaro. Find us online at radiofreeskaro.com, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr at Radio Free Skaro, subscribe to us on iTunes, and donate to the show at patreon.com/Radio Free Skaro. Thank you.